session will be on the CKA or Kubernetes application developer study and exam tips. So today we'll pretty much be going over what to expect in the exam and how you can efficiently study and prepare for it. So the agenda today will be 30 minutes presentation, and then we'll go into a Q&A session as well afterwards. So we'll have 10 minutes exam tips, 10 minutes study tips. Then we'll go over some practical examples using the kubectl, practicing imperative commands, going over a little of the helper functions and stuff that are really important on exam day. And then if we do go over with the Q&A, we can speak afterwards as well. So it'll just be me presenting today. I've recently done both my application developer and my CKA as well. And at the moment, currently studying for my CKS, which is the last one of the trilogy. I'm the head of platform engineering at a company called Search 365. So special thanks to the SIG Docs team. Their documentation was really good and was really helpful in the exam. If you want to reach out to them, or if you think there's something they need to add, you can go to they've got 2 Slack groups, which are a great community to be a part of. You can see all the things going on with Kubernetes and the CNCF. So there's 2 links there. I'll be sending all the links later, by the way, as well. So there'll be quite a lot of links as we go through this. And we're also in the Slack channel, so CNCF Community Manly. If you have any questions and need help preparing for exam, let me know, and we can either answer them there, or if there's another session that you guys want to have, something like network policies or ingress, or those ones are a little bit harder, or persistent volumes, we can do another session on that. So you can find us in there. So we'll start on the exam overview. So why sit the exam? I think it's pretty obvious why everyone's here today to study for the exam. So Kubernetes is blowing up. Yeah, because of that, CNCF wanted to make the exam so good for both employees and employers, demonstrating their skills, and helps people get jobs. In the exam curriculum, they've recently changed it a little bit, but now we have 13% core concepts, 18% configuration, 10% multi-container pods, 18% observability, 20% pod design, 13% services and networking, and 8% state persistence. So there's around 20 questions in the actual exam. So those questions are weighted as well. So it's probably good to know all these before you go to sit it. When I first did my first exam, I got down to about the pod design, finished that, and I didn't study services and networking and state persistence as much as I should have. So it really does count for all that percentage that you need on the day. And this is what the certificate looks like at the end. You get like a little badge and then a pretty cool CKAD certificate. This certificate's easier than the CKA, but I think it's a great first step to do before you do CKA, and then a lot of the stuff that you cover in this exam is actually valid in CKA as well. So I think it's a good approach to start with your CKAD and then go into CKA. So when you're booking your exam, you can go to the link up the top. So cncf.io, certification CKAD. You can reschedule this as many times as you want. So I probably rescheduled something crazy like 10 times because I set a goal and then I got busy with work and then I had to change my priorities and then come back to studying them. So I find it's good to book the exam now, and then you set a goal of what you want to achieve with your study. And I find that it's easier to reach that goal if you know the exam's coming up. So it's 300 US, quite expensive, but a lot of countries you can get tax back on that with your tax return, and hopefully if you are working, your boss will pay for that as well. And then you also get one free retake too. So if you fail, you get to reset it again, which is quite good. In terms of discounts, that there are quite a few discounts out there. The biggest one that I've found and I use is KubeCon. So when you register for KubeCon, you get 50% off your exam, which is quite generous. I got the early bird this year, so it only cost me $10, and then I get 50% off when I go to book my CKAD. An important thing to note is you only get that discount when on the day of KubeCon. So it's like the voucher gets released then. So don't think if you buy your ticket, you'll get that automatically. You have to wait till the actual day. So I think that's coming up in a couple of months. So that's a good discount. And there are other ones. If you sign up, to do your study as well, you can get other discounts, but this is the biggest one that I've found so far. So I'll send this link afterwards as well. It also is for the US KubeCon as well. This one's for the Europe one because that's the one coming up soon. So this is what I hope everyone likes my picture. I did this today. This is what it'll look like on exam day. So what I have is I use two screens. You're allowed to use two screens, and I have the Kubernetes documentation on the one screen, and then you have your exam portal on the other. So generally on the left side, you'll have your exam questions. You'll have the terminal where you can do your commands and do your resources, and you'll need a webcam, mic, identification, and you can't eat food, but you can have a clear glass to drink water with. So they don't like anything on the walls, and you're allowed to sort of sign in and do all these checks 15 minutes before you start, which I always do because every minute matters on this test because it's 100% performance-based. So I recommend reading the handbook. I normally do my exams about 1 p.m. Then I'll wake up in the morning. I'll do a binge study. So study, 5 hours up until the 1 p.m. and then I find that that's a good time to do it in the weekend. They have a notepad in the portal as well, which is great. So if there's things that you've just studied and you want to sort of remember them, you can write them on the notepad as soon as you start. And it's good in terms of context. So you'll have to point to different clusters sometimes, but you'll be able to click on the hyperlink and copy it, and then you don't have to worry too much about going around the servers. And it's obviously going to be a little bit different to your study environments, but the only two differences are that copy and paste will be different. So the exam guy, he'll tell you what copy and paste are, but when I did it, it was shift insert and shift delete. So you can always ask them on the chat as well. And that's really the only things that you need to know for the day. They'll ask you to walk around under your desk, under your keyboard, and just go around with the camera. My wife is happy on this day because I have to clean the office really good. So I guess that's one benefit of doing that. So yeah, these are just some things I've talked about then. So you can start 15 minutes before, make sure it's clean, nothing on the walls, drinks to be in a clear glass, and toilet breaks are allowed. You generally just say it on the chat, they'll stop the exam, you can go to the toilet and come back. No talking during the exam, so this is an important one. So you can't read questions aloud. So sometimes when I was looking at the question, I was, almost going to read it aloud, but they'll tell you off, and they think that maybe you're talking to someone. So you can't talk at all, and no one else is allowed to be in the room, obviously, when doing it. And just make sure you have good internet, because once my internet wasn't great, and it's almost like the portal has like an expectation of internet, and it pauses when you don't have good internet. So it's really important you have good internet. And I highly recommend having 2 monitors if you can, even if you have to borrow one, because it's so efficient, and you need all the time you can get. So it consists of 15 to 20 performance-based questions. It was a fun exam to do because it's 100% practical. There's no multi-choice questions. So, and each question has a weight. So on your first set, you probably won't be able to answer every question, but if there's only a question worth 2% and you don't really know it, just flag it and move on. That's a good piece of advice, because every minute matters, and you don't want to waste time on one that you don't really know. So I would only attempt the ones that you're quite confident on, and you can always come back afterwards. And as soon as I get into the exam, I type sudo -i. That will elevate your privileges. So you don't want to be stuck like mucking around with users and basic Linux stuff, and you can't save text files, all your YAML files, because you can't waste time. It's the first thing you should type in sudo, and then you elevate those permissions. If you need to go into a node, you can use the SSH node ban. They give you all this information, so you don't need to worry too much about it, but it's good to know before you go in. And you can do the kubectl get nodes -oy. That will tell you everything you need to know about a node, but it'll be in there anyway. And they have some pretty weird namespaces, so there'll be namespaces like just non-alphabet, just ones that don't make sense. So it's good to copy and paste them into your files instead of typing them, just in case you do a typo, and then you miss out on all those points just because of a typo. And always use imperative commands over YAML. So imperative commands are much faster, and you won't do as many mistakes if you use imperative commands, which we'll go over quite a few today. A good tip that I was doing was every question, so you're going to be generating a lot of YAML files. So I would always call the YAML file with a number of the question, and then if I did need to come back, I would know which one to go to. So if I had a pod in the service, for example, I would call one-service for the YAML. And you can see the kube run example where this is one I use a lot. So you can half make the file that you want, and then the -o YAML, one.yaml, that will write that to the file. And then the first time I did the exam, I was a little bit paranoid, so I was just backing that file up, but I don't really need to do that anymore. And then we use the kubectl to create the deployment or probabilities. This is quite a good one as well. So instead of running kubectl all the time, I use the alias k. So I'd say k get pods, k get deployments, etc. Some people use more than just that alias, so they alias kubectl get pods, but I think k is good enough. I mean, you don't really want to be worrying about aliasing stuff on a computer that's going to go. And what I found with doing the CKAD is because you're moving in and out of so many computers, you spend more time because your alias doesn't work because you need to set it on that computer. So I think just using K is okay. So when you're studying always set the alias K equals kubectl, and then that will help you type it faster. And it's annoying to type kubectl all the time anyway. So make sure you're the right cluster and the right namespace as well. So that will avoid you deploying into the wrong namespace. And then one thing I did with the YAML files, what you see me doing here, is that I would always type the namespace in the file just in case I forgot to, and then I can just create that as well. So you can always go kubectl config current context, and that will tell you if you're in the right context that you should be based on the question, and that will always be written on the top of the question. So kubectl API resources, this is quite a good one. So you can see that you can use this for like aliases or short names. So if you're writing out persistent volume claims, then that's way too many letters. You can just write PVC. So this is good on exam day as well. If you don't, if you're under pressure and you forget something or you forget what resource you should be using, you can use the API resources to bring those up. And then there's reverse search as well. So if you press Control R, you can, so it's reverse back search, and then that will just come up the top there, and you can, it has memory of what you've done before, so you can save a bit of time there also. The watch command is quite helpful as well. So if you're going kubectl, get pod all the time, you can actually just watch it, and then every second that will ping that command, and then instead of hitting it, you can just patiently wait there, get a glass of water, relax a little bit. When your pod's done, check it, and then you can move on to the next question instead of just keep smashing the keyboard and waiting all the time. And the help is a really good one. So you can use this for pretty much anything. So you can see here I used it for pods, and this is super helpful if you can't remember how to do stuff like variables, the environment variables, labels, command. Pretty much you can just copy and paste that, and that will almost answer your question. So if you haven't seen that before, practice around with that. You can do it for other things like deployments, and you can just practice around and see. So study tips. So there's a lot of different courses you can take out there. Some pretty popular ones at the moment, Gimme and the Killer Shell. The Linux Foundation also has them, and there's a lot of sort of Git repos going around that have some pretty cool tasks and examples to do. I haven't seen them, but I'll probably, when I do my CKAD, I'll probably check those out because there's been a lot of work done by those guys. I myself did Udemy and CodeCloud. So there's a guy called Moonshot Manambeth. He's really explains Kubernetes really good, and I found his course really good. So what I did is, he has a CodeCloud simulator, same as the Killer Shell, and then you can just really practice your practical as well. So he does lectures and then hands-on lab after your lecture. So yeah, I recommend that course. So you can see at the top here, you're actually allowed bookmarks. So this is really, really helpful to pass the exam. So what I do is I watch all the lectures. I make sure that I understand them. And then when I go to the hands-on, if I need to know how to do something, I'll refer to the documentation, and then I'll bookmark the page. So you can see up here, the first one I have is kubectl. That's probably the one I go with the most. And then, I have, pods, pod arguments, deployments, services, network, So what you want to do when you're studying is make up an index of where to find all this information, and the documentation is really, really good. Even after the exam, when I'm doing production communities, I'm always going back to refer to these bookmarks, and I still use them today. So it's super helpful. And some people ask me if I can send them to them, but I think it's important that you make them yourself, because you're the one that can go find that when you actually need to information. It's almost a waste of time if I export them to you. So you can see here that I have a lot as well. So whenever this is CKAD and CKAD, so yeah, you can see that I can just go through very fast and get the information that I need. So that's probably the best tip that I have, is to really, when you're studying, just every practical thing that you do, just bookmark the page and know where to find it. And in your practice test, you can use that as well. And that will help you get speed, because you need to be really fast. And you can't be guessing or hunting around documentation all the time. So if you can't use those, the help command, you can fall back to this, or yeah, it's quite good. Yeah, this is the kubectl, so you can do a lot of stuff in here. They have pretty good documentation as well, so most of you have probably seen this by now. So if you haven't checked it out, and there's also a kubectl cheat sheet that's pretty good as well. So the next one is the Vim editor. So if you're doing this, you probably come from a developer background. So most developers probably don't know the Vim editor, but I would say that, yeah, if you don't know it, you learn it before you do the exam, because yeah, Nano's good and that can work, but when you do things like edit deployments, if you need to change a replica, if you need to change a spelling mistake to troubleshoot a deployment, that's going to be in Vim. So some people don't even know how to exit it. So you don't want to be start by something stupid like that. So I would take the time. There's a good cheat sheet here, super helpful, at the vim.rtr.com, and he's just got everything in there, and you'll be surprised what you can do in that area. It's pretty cool. So these are the ones that I really use. So there's two modes. There's one for writing and one for editing. So you press I, and that will go into when you want to edit the YAML file, and then you want to press escape when you want to go back to edit mode. And if you type the semicolon Q exclamation mark, that will exit out of them without saving. And then the WQ exclamation mark will be for writing the file and then getting out of it. And a lot of the times I was using DD as well. So when I was using the dry run equals client, there's a lot of rubbish in there, like the metadata and stuff that you don't actually need. So I would use like 50 dB, and it's generally about 70 lines, but that would just take all that out, and then it's easier for me to work, and I can see what I'm actually doing. So the DB command is quite cool. There's a go-to line as well, and also sometimes when you're troubleshooting, you'll say like there was a error on line 34. So if you type semicolon set number, that will show the line numbers on the left. Some people, before their exam, in the exam at the start, they actually configure the settings to this. There's a file that you can configure with all these special things, but I didn't really worry too much about it. I just used these ones, they were enough. And if you want to search for like image, if you need to change the image generally, you just go / the word you're looking for and press enter, and that will go to that line. So yeah, if you don't know Vim, learn it. It's going to save you a lot of time. Also, basic Linux commands. If you're more of a developer, you haven't you've done a little Linux but not much, you probably don't know grep, cat, just a few simple ones. So grep's really helpful. You can find words that you're looking for. You can search, it just searches for text if you pipe it. Cat, if you say like cat deployment YAML, that will show you the file. So sometimes you might want to go through log files or something and you just display it on the console instead of going into it. And then you just have the obvious ones like cd, alias, copy, move, delete. If you type v as well, that will go into the v area. So you can type v, like remember if we said run pushing one, you can type v1.yaml and that will come up with a blank page. So yeah, I recommend if you don't know basic Linux, I would go back and learn it because there's no real point of trying to go for a career exam if you don't know basic Linux, because if you want to come into this world, there's a lot of Linux that you're going to have to deal with anyway, so it's better to walk before you can run. And then, so we'll go on to a few practical examples. A lot of this can be found in the courses, but what I'm trying to show you is little tips to save time. So where I can use imperative commands, I'll try and list a few out with these categories. And it might help you save a bit of time in the exam there. So these are some more helpers. So if you need to track down pods based on labels, you can either show the label or you can get pods. So if you see the second line, get pods -l epic progress, so that's going to go find all the pods with the label epic equals Postgres. One cool thing I found is instead of I used to type -- or -namespaces, and that took a long time. So I actually found out pretty recently that -A will show you pods and all namespaces. So that's good if you want to hunt down stuff. Obviously, the N is the namespace if you want to list out the namespace. So if you go get all, that's generally good for if you just want to sort of double check your work and make sure the service is in there, the pod, deployment, etc. So that doesn't cover everything. Sometimes you'll have to look at persistent volumes and persistent volume claims, etc. because not everything is listed there. Kube API resources we went over before, so as well as the other two as well. So yeah, the main thing out of that slide there is probably just the -O for listing on all namespaces. So here's some ones based on the core concepts. So instead of going to the YAML and doing these environment variables and labels and commands, that can be a little bit time consuming doing all the indentations and going to the file, saving file, etc. So you can use the help command to list most of these. So one I found helpful is the command run. That's quite cool. And remember, if there's more stuff that you need to do that you can't do a parameter for, you can just output that to a YAML file and then you can add the rest. But it's good to do as much of this as you can with the parameters that you know. And then, let's say, for example, you need labels, but you also need, let's say that you can't do replicas. So replicas too, so you can go and the labels already be there, then you just add the replicas in. So yeah, you can do the requests and limits as well, instead of having to go to the documentation. So this is an example of a config map one. So config maps really easy to make with an imperative command. You can just type C in for sure as well. You don't have to spell out config map from the little username that was brand. So if you needed to do more than one, you would just type again from the rule. And then you can confirm that config maps there. And then see the next line, I'm making a test pod with the BusyBox image. and then I want to output that because I want to add the config ref. So if you look up at my bookmarks, to solve this question, I just click config map, and that will tell me, that will give me the pod template, and then I just use that based on the config map that I've created. So just, yeah, it's a easy way where you can use both the imperative commands and the documentation to quickly answer the problem. So that's one that might come up. And then pretty much you can do the same for secrets as well. So instead of having to, do base 64 and all that stuff, the kubectl will do it for you. So you just type in the password and that will go make the secret. And then you can reference the secret as an environment variable shown there. Service accounts are easy as well. So you can use a kubectl to create a service account, and then as the parameter service account, when you run the pod, you just type that in. So you don't have to do any other rules. You can do the task in like 1 minute. So a big part of the CKAD is observability. So you have to be going through logs a lot, and yeah, after some of you probably have production instruments now, but when you do go into production, a lot of your day will be actually looking at logs. Logs, why does this not work? So if you use kubectl logs, then the pod name, that will list you all the logs coming out of it. You can also get logs, from more than one pod. If something you're trying to troubleshoot, let's say like environment dev, and you can go try and hunt around and see what logs come out. If you need to, a lot of the time the logs will be actually inside the container or the pod, so you can use the command kubectl exec type of pod name. If it's a multi-container, so more than one container, then you have to specify the container name. It'll tell you if you don't do it that there's more than one container, so don't worry about that. And then you go -- for the command, and this is the basic Linux I'm talking about before. So you're going to cat that log file, and that will put the logs onto your console so you can see them. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, or you forget it, you can actually go into the pod as well. So you can see on the next one. An important thing to note here as well is that I found when you're going into a pod, it's better to specify the namespace straight after kubectl instead of the end, because see, when you have the -- then sh, it won't pick it up if you're used to putting the namespace, specifying it as the last piece. So I always put the -n namespace after kubectl. So that's how you can get inside the pod, which also in production we do a lot as well. Sometimes you need to go in and see how things work, and especially if it's software that you haven't actually written yourself. And then if you want more tips on observability, the cheat sheet has a lot as well. So they have probably 10 lines based on logs, everything that you need to do for that. So if this question does come up, it's an easy question. If you remember the metrics server and they ask you what's the node that's using the most CPU, all you need to do is type kubectl top node, and that will come up and show you the nodes. And then you can quite easily see that it's the top one there. And then that's the same for pods as well. So you probably want to be safe, put the -O for all namespaces, based on if that's what they're asking, if it's in a particular namespace or just through the whole cluster. So yeah, just remember top node and top pod, pretty easy to remember. And then just practice your deployments as well. So generally the only commands that you need to do is the replicas and the port. So this is one that comes up in the CKAD, is rolling updates and rollbacks. This is quite an easy one as well if you remember these 3 lines. So sometimes they'll ask the task of, do you want to do a rolling update or a rollback? And then, so let's say that you want to update the image of the deployment. You can set the image. You can see here that you specify the deployment, and then you specify the Unix container and what image that you want to do. And then to check when that's rolling out, you go rollout status, deployment and Unix deployment. So you can see once it's rolled out, and then you might have to roll back. So to roll back, you go kubectl rollout undo deployment and Nginx. So that's a good one to practice as well, and that's in the documentation under the deployment page. So you can go in and then you can see how to do that and just have a practice. It's quite simple. And jobs as well. So you can do an imperative command for creating a job. I don't myself. I find it easier to go into the documentation and then just copy and paste the YAML and change it to what you need to. Same as cron jobs, because they can get quite nested with, if you think about this spec, so you have your cron job, which is then a job and then a pod. So anything to do with job, cron jobs, I generally document that page and then we'll bookmark that page and then I'll just click into it and then change it based on if it has requirements for completions, etc. And then services. So this is sort of one of the basic ones that you'll probably do at the start. So you can see here, the main commands are cluster IP and node port. You don't really need to use a load balancer. So you can see it's pretty easy to create the service. Generally, if you're making a pod as well, you would click, you would use expose instead of create, because it's a bit safer, I guess. It makes the selectors for you instead of placing the labels. And if you are a little bit confused about what service you're making, you can either export it as a YAML and just check the type, or you can specify the type as a parameter as well. So it's just a parameter. Generally, most of the stuff I do, I put into YAML and then just proofread it and then deploy it. And then I add the namespace to it just so I don't accidentally forget. So network policies don't really have enough. That's quite a big topic. Don't have too much time to talk about that, but I'm probably going to run another session for that. I would say that's one of the harder ones for this. So I would spend a bit of time studying that, ingress, and persistent volumes. And one command I think so before was the explain command. So once I had a problem with host path, and this is for the stateful systems. So you can see in the YAML file there, for a volume use host path. If you forget this, then you find it hard in the documentation to find. You can use the kubectl explain persistent volume recursive, and that will give you like a YAML definition of pretty much every single possible line that you can make, and then that will help you remember how to do things. So if I ran it for this, it would say, host path, and it would have indentations for path and type. So also another quite a cool tip for an exam, the explain function. If you haven't used that, then play around with that as well. And once again, there's a lot to cover for stable systems. So generally, we're doing this near the end of the exam. So I would try and, it's not a high percentage, but every percent you really need to know like every aspect of the exam curriculum. So definitely study that as well. and you use that in the real world a lot as well, with persistent volume times. So it's good to know. And yeah, pretty much we're coming up to finish before the questions and answers. So don't be afraid to fail. I failed my CKAD and my CKA, but the second time I got a high passing mark because the first one was treated almost like a practice. Yeah, and next is learn the basics first. So learn the basic Linux, learn kubectl. Don't try and be a hero and just think that you can do Kubernetes without knowing those basic things. So don't be afraid to sort of go back and study that. And then, yeah, if you are having trouble, getting a test environment or something, you can reach out to me and I can see what I can do to help with that. And yeah, just remember those Slack channels that I put at the start. I'll show you the links later. They're really, really helpful. There's a massive community that if you don't know, it's super helpful. You can ask anyone a question and they'll help you out. So I highly recommend getting into those Slack channels. And you'll see after your certs, how you contribute to Kubernetes as well. I'll put all these links on the GitHub later on, but yeah, essentially on the right, there's the room, there's the, you might want to take a screenshot of that maybe. You've got the two Slack channels you can join, Docs Home, yeah, and the KubeCon if you want to get the discounts as well. So thank you. We'll go into the questions and answers as well. I'll just get that up on the screen.